Circuitry. This is about being empowered to live as oneself. So knowing Circuitry, it empowers others to be an individual example of their own uniqueness, and their need is to be observed and recognized for that uniqueness. It's inspired and intuitive knowing of each moment, because it's the moment by moment knowing of the spleen, as well as the passionate and melancholic moodiness of the emotional wave, which is unpredictable, creative, and unique. And it's not about mastering, perfecting, or organizing, but it's about birthing something new, totally new, and potentially transformative into the world as an individual.
Yeah, and it's that pulse we talk about so often, and it is that melancholy that's guaranteed there. It's funny, we get into a touch of melancholy, and people call it the end of the world sometimes. You know what I mean? They just don't
Sky
know
is
what
falling.
the sky's falling. And you can't quite tell what it is. Well, now we can keynote for you exactly what that is, and you'll see it's creative space. It's always a creative space. Sadness becomes an incredibly creative space. And this exemplifies it. And the channels we're going to do coming up are going to exemplify it too.
Diving into our first channel, which is the 63. And this is the channel of mutation, and it is the design of initiating and fluctuating energy. Gate 60 is limitation, is the gate of acceptance, and it is a root center gate, which is that bottom brown triangle. And then gate 3 is difficulty at the beginning, and it's the gate of ordering, and it is a sacral gate, which is just above the root, and it's that red square. And this channel is about the potential for evolutionary change through unpredictable, mutative, and melancholic nature. And it depends on the capacity to accept limitation and transcend the confusion of new beginnings.
That transcending of the new beginnings is so hard. It's just so hard. You're 4 years old and you step out onto the ice for the first time that you really remember, let's say, and you've got your sea legs on at 4, but it's still, what is this? Where is that? My toy is so far away. Everything is this like long, far new beginning that shows up. So this channel of mutation, the reason we're even going through circuitry, just to put this in perspective, is so we can get to the magic of the keynote for each circuitry, and you can finally, you can fully understand the full breadth of what that's doing. This is dying to empower something brand new into the world specifically, and it doesn't know what it is because it's got to transcend a limitation of essentially not knowing. That's the transcension part. And then it gets into gate 3, and gate 3 is just, because it's sacral and it's sustaining and it's got a buzz of energy, if gate 3 picks it up, it somehow orders the thing and it comes into the world. And everyone with this channel, or even with this gate, especially in a divine center, gate 3, knows that, or 60 for that matter, knows that ordering just takes place in a moment. It's that whole everything, and then suddenly, oh, my path forward is this, especially that whole thing we do. This is a great place for all that recognizing it didn't matter. I didn't need to concern myself with any of that. It all rubs itself away, and ordering takes place through the chaos of the noise that was distracting it in the first place. This is a format gate. It guarantees a certain amount of melancholy. I don't know if that's on the next slide or not.
We have it here a little bit when I wanted to dive into that with the root center, right? Because it's like this melancholic idea. And so from my understanding, it's like the root is this like adrenalized like pulse of energy. It's like, you know, now you're stepping on the gas and you're like, you can go. But because it's a pulse, it's not always steady. And that's part of why there's a melancholy.
It's never steady. And that's a big part of the melancholy. It's never technically steady. It might be all on, and that would be a steady state for a little while, I guess. But
but then it turns off again, right?
Well, because it's in a pulse. So yeah. What Moni's referring to is there is a chemistry inside of us that brings new and creative inspiration somehow or other being contributed right out of us into the world, or wanting to. And what Moni's referring to is the fact that this stuff happens in a pulse. We don't get to choose it per se, and everyone knows that creative pulse shows up. You can't schedule it, in other words, like the collective can schedule things. And the tribe certainly schedules things. This can't be scheduled in any kind of way. It fits the definition of creation. And when the creation isn't there, the melancholy comes in. Gate 3 says, I don't want to be here. You know, there's too much. It's absolute just melancholy and sadness and almost fear, but sadness over too much disorder. I can't, there's too much pressure coming in. I don't know where the thing's going to be. I am lost in this disorder. And the melancholy of gate 60 is the melancholy of I'm stuck. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. Gate 3 sounds like it's stuck, but it's really in a morass of confusion in a sense, transcending that. I know it sounds like a mental gate, but and 60 does the melancholy of that. And it, if you have this channel in your body graph, you've got a great adrenalized pressure that wants to sustain at the new thing. It can't help it when it finds it. And it can be very sad and restless when it's not. And that vibration will go through all the rest of the individual circuitry if you have this channel. It will format. That's why it's called the format. All the rest of the circuitry of the individual knowing circuit.
Next up, we have the 14 and 2, which is the channel of the beat, and it is a design of being a keeper of keys. And so gate 14 is possession in great measure, the gate of power skills, and it's a sacral gate, so it's that red square below. And then the gate 2 is the receptive, and it's the gate of the direction of self, and it is that yellow diamond just above the red sacral square. And so gate 14 is particularly focused on the availability of material resources to fuel mutation. And then gate 2 is the seat of the driver, the magnetic monopole, that one-way magnet that exists within our G center, our identity center, that yellow diamond, that's pulling in a one-way direction, everything towards us. And the magnetic monopole, the driver, that's what's holding us together and driving our movement in time through space. And together, the 14 and 2 are poised to take us in a new direction.
Yeah, so look at it this way. It's the continuation of having started something new, birthed something new through a mutative pattern of 60 and 3, the channel of mutation. But that channel of mutation doesn't have a direction. However, the sacral is forming one because ordering has taken place. As ordering takes place, 14 and 2 pick up and really drive a direction. You can look at 14 like a gas pedal. It's an individual gas pedal. It wants to work. It thinks it wants to work. It would like to get to work, making something happen and move in a direction. So these are folks that might pick up odd jobs and stuff just to, like, where will the direction come from the work, you know? And if you only have a gate 14, the melancholy is, I keep working, but I can't tell where it's going to go. I can't tell. I want my work. It's sort of like 34. It says I have this power, but I can't seem to drain it out into something worthy and righteous and now, you know. And 14 is now, and it says I can't. What job is right for me? Where am I going with this? What is my life supposed to be? Because it doesn't have the direction of 2 yet. Once you give it direction of 2 is a speedy little devil. It sits there and it's like, come on, 14, you said you want to work. I'm in a hurry. Gate 2 is always in a hurry to get the direction moving. Gate 2 would be very much like the kid that definitely wants to get to the destination. Mom, hurry up, hurry up. Are we there already? Are we there already? It would, you know, it's got that kind of energy. And as it picks it up, it literally helps suddenly make this tantric channel that is speedy and it's quick and it gets to work. And because it's guided by the sacral, empowered by the sacral, and if that being is themselves, that sacral energy will pour out in a way that is perfect, right? Because they're being themselves. That ensures the perfect energy pouring out. And gate 2 suddenly receives that empowerment, the keynote of all of this individual circuitry, and it says, boom, we got gas, we got fueled up, we got keys. It's like the Blues Brothers. I got a full tank of gas and a half a pack of smokes, and it's 100 miles to LA. Hit it, you know?
Chicago.
See,
Blues Brothers, that's my town.
That's your town. That's right. You're right. Chicago. That's right. I thought it was LA. Anyway,
It's cute.
so, but it's like that. It's just, it wants to hit it, drop it, and we're wearing sunglasses. I think was the last line of that, and so they hit it, and
Yeah.
that's what it's a tantric channel. And it's called the channel of the beat because, and the keeper of the keys overall, because it has the keys that starts the motor, allows the motor to drive a direction. This channel guarantees the love of all things, which is in the identity, along with its love of a direction, right, towards beauty. it empowers the expedience of that. And empowerment is the keynote for all of the individual circuitry. So the empowerment of the first channel we read, 60 and 3, would be let me empower you to this brand new thing that I just put it all in order. Let me empower you with what just happened, basically. 14 and 2 is like, we're pretty clear on what just happened. Let me empower you with the fact that we got moving. And then as we move up, you'll see the story it tells on the way to where do all roads lead, to the throat. Yeah.
That's fun.
I think I got enough on that one. I mean, that's a cursory look at 14.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked you explaining the Keeper of the Keys thing, because I'm like, that's really interesting. I was thinking of like Hagrid from like Harry Potter's like the Keeper of the Keys. But I like that of like the 2 has like the keys to the car. If like it's like the monopole and the seat of the vehicle is the identity center, then the T2 it's like has the keys to the car, but it's like waiting for the 14 for that like response to
step on the gas, rev up that motor, be all them cylinders that are kicking real tight, all of it. You know what I mean?
That's cool. I like that breakdown.
And one last thing, just because some people will know about the Penta, this is a prized channel in the Penta because this guarantees that a bunch of work will get done. Movements like, okay, team, we're on a job. And it won't necessarily have the right direction. It might have lots of problems with what it's supposed to be keeping track of. I'm keynoting gates that wouldn't be there potentially, but this is a prize gate because it's an engine that makes sure forward-looking and in a material sense profitable work gets done. In a real sense, it's that enjoyable sacral work gets done, which is not profitable or not profitable. You know what I'm saying? But it is both in this current world we're in. So
cool.
Yep.
Final thing I wanted to bring up, just because you had mentioned it a couple times, that the 214 is one of the tantric channels. So just to like explain that to the viewers back home, the tantric channels are the channels between the sacral, the red square, and the identity center, which is that yellow diamond. So it's those 3 channels. So it'd be the 15, the 5, the 2, and the 14, and the 46 and the 29. So all 3 of those channels are considered tantric channels, and we will have an episode going over that in the future.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm going to want to expand Tantra at some point. We'll have to talk about that offline because as we grow, I think Tantra goes all the way from the root up to the throat. I really do, at least aspects of it, but we'll talk about that offline.
Well, the future episode, the first part is going to be the format channels, which are the root to the sacral, all 3 of those, and then the tantric are the sacral to the identity. So we'll get into all that good stuff.
We'll get it. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. I guess that's about all I need to say about this, other than we want to start really driving in now as we go through. What is it empowering? Why is empowerment this keynote? And so we can juice out and fill in that word empowerment. So as people go through and start realizing the keynotes for the circuitry is really profound stuff. One word seems boring. It's not. It's filled with juice. And Moni and I are going to do our best to fill that in.
Next up, we have the 1-8, and this is the channel of inspiration. It is a design of a creative role model. And so gate 1 is the creative, or the gate of self-expression, and it's an identity center gate. So it's that yellow diamond. And then gate 8 is holding together, or the gate of contribution, which is a throat gate, which is the brown square above the yellow diamond. And so the 1-8 is the individual doorway to creatively expressing a mutative perspective. And it takes courage to stand out from the crowd, to inspire others, and to be equally bold. Living as an individual is an art designed to get attention.
The wearer of the bright red bow tie.
And suspenders.
And suspenders, maybe. Absolutely. That's a strong possibility, depending on. So it's the expression of our unique direction. We just empowered it with new beginnings, right? And an energy from the root that is tantric all on its own, right? It's adrenalized. It pours into the 14 and the 2, which suddenly fires up its engine, folks, and sitting at the starting line, and their flag is being waved to get going. And now, okay, you got going. Who's expressing that? How's it expressing? It can't be expressed by the collective, which shares that expression, would share it. And it can't be by the tribe, which would have a possessive version of that expression. It can only be by the individual that had it. It fleets and it's gone as soon as it's tried to pass on to the next person, unless they really can explain it and they can let it get out. So the uniqueness here is that this thing is dying to empower everyone else through a contribution. That's the voice of each time we get to the throat, we'll name the voice. The voice of gate 8 is like, I contribute or not.
Mm-hmm.
I want to contribute or not. I have a contribution or not. I have contributed. Right? And it's like when you contribute your uniqueness and it's accepted, the contribution is complete. Right? It's like a transaction. There's the offer and the acceptance of it. It's got to get accepted or it won't empower. And there comes the melancholy of this channel. I could not empower anyone with my unique insight, my unique expression that came out of me. And this channel would be the channel of the creative role model, meaning I model myself to be me, and it's so creative. And yeah, it is a red bow tie and suspenders, and that's great. And I am me, and it boldly needs to be me. All the individual definition does, because it can't empower the other as anything other than itself. That's the point. You find places of low empowerment, you find places of high not self.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just a really straight correlation. And so the contribution of gate 8 that wants to, it's manifesting, right? If this were connected straight to a motor with no sacral, it would be a manifester, right?
I mean,
And
if
so,
there was a motor to it on its own, it would be a projector.
right. And if there was no direct connect, it would be a projector. But I'm just saying it's manifesting because all the throat gates, some way, shape, or form.
Oh, okay. I understand the clarification there. Yeah, because the throat center is this center for manifestation. And
yes.
So it's a funny thing when the human design keywords overlap and you're like, wait, let me clarify that one. Let me clarify that one.
It's a good idea. And hopefully you're noticing not only do they overlap, but when you're using human design to explain the thing, and if you yourself are in your experiment looking for the words, they start to stack up. It's in the layering and stacking up that you now start to realize, oh, I have language for myself, just like learning a language, stacking up the vowels and stacking up the sounds. And I remember the first time I sounded out a word, it was like, take all those vowels and consonants you just said and sound it out. And that's exactly what this is. We're always sounding it out and saying, the keynotes on top. So this is melancholic when there is no empowerment, when it cannot empower something new, and it's the contribution to group goals. So this is the most exalted expression of individualities to recognize its potential key into the collective matrix, into the collectiveness of it all, because it's towards group goals. It's never just a contribution. 8 and 1 in a channel, and they got the most stunning contribution. If it is, there's no one to tell and there's no one to contribute it to, it almost doesn't matter if it's like 12 giant 22-pound gold bricks. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah. That makes sense also if it's projected on its own. It's like It needs to be recognized, it needs to be seen, or it's just like murp, murp, murp.
Yeah, which gives way to the fact that being yourself, following your strategy and authority, recognizing what's going on here. 8 and 1 are wicked sensitive to 2 and 14, which are wicked sensitive to 3 and 60. So they only as yourself do you align, and you don't have to think about it. Really. Yeah. What else about this? It's again one of the channels of the Penta. For anyone who's interested in that stuff later, we'll get to it.
Future episode.
Yep. And its uniqueness is like stunning. These ones will cling to it and be there, or there'll be a certain amount of misery. And it's never understood because its uniqueness, as was formatted by the original pulse in the channel of mutation, comes in a pulse. And just really get to know what that pulse is. That pulse is, you don't know, you have no idea, and then it arrives. No different than whatever, the waves in the ocean. You don't know. Here's one. Here's another one. That's how it comes. So.
Yeah. The only last thing I wanted to share is I love the description of the 1 and the 8 as like the 1 is like that individual artist, right? That's just like has its direction and is like creating some cool, crazy art. And then the 8 is like the art promoter. And it
totally.
Yeah, it was just an interesting way for me to grasp what this channel meant. And so if you have, just the 1, maybe you're like this artist, but you don't know how to promote yourself. And on the flip side, if you have the 8 and not the 1, then, maybe you're not the one creating the art, but you want to contribute it out into the world. You want to share it. You're like the promoter for it.
Totally, and you don't know where that creativity will come from. Why am I not contributing creatively enough? And if you're just a one, the melancholy hones down a little further into, I am so creative. Why is it not being contributed? Because if you only have one of each of those gates, its recognition is that its chemistry and the whole chemistry of the body of this being, when they make a contribution, lights up. And I think we've even mentioned this before. If there was a team of doctors there with all kinds of vital statistics, quietly taking them, they would find, oh my God, in those 8 minutes, this person's body was as tuned as their athletic 20-year-old self.
Mm.
That's what they would find. I don't know exactly that, but versions
Yeah,
of
for
that.
the sake of like you're giving an analogy for the sake
Oh
of a
my God,
story.
totally.
Like it's
Yep.
not like, yeah, it's not a
Yeah,
one-to-one, but like the essence of it, I understand what you
very
mean, is like
much.
they would be very much in tune with themselves and their expression and contribution into the world.
Yes, yes, everything would be working right.
So the 6124 is the channel of awareness, and it's the design of a thinker. And so gate 61 is inner truth, or the gate of mystery, and it's a head center gate, which is that yellow triangle right above on top. And then the gate 24 is the return, or the gate of rationalization, and it's an ajna gate, which is the downward facing green triangle. I'm going to get really good with all my shapes in my hands.
Mhm.
And so the 6124, this is about the mental capacities of the individual, comprised of inspiration. And so gate 61 is inner truth, and gate 24 is rationalization. And so it's like the 61 is like inspiring it, and then 24 is like, how do I process this? And it's going to go over and over until it gets it. And so mental definition, bringing sudden experience of knowing, a satori moment.
Yeah, and that Satori is very much what happens when Deepak Chopra figured out the 7 rules of success or whatever it was I forgot the name of the book, Spiritual Success. That was a moment. That was a
Mm-hmm.
Satori. It's like it came through. That's 360 as well.
Mm.
So
But just a
notice
different vibe on it.
a very different, because now it's up in the toy box. It's up in the mental ajna where its resonant frequency is going to be held onto over all of time. It will always be part of the way this being now is able to have their conceptual factory get to work. That's what they're always looking to do, is put it into a concept. And so a lot's going on here, because there's a melancholy and a fear and a pressure. It's all of these things. And you'll notice the pressure moving down, all the pressure is always pushing towards the throat. So this wants to get out and empower, right? The
The
individual
individual.
field. Yep. Empower themselves and others. And it would like to empower a sudden, almost freakish new knowing, but it's like just conceptually, it's almost occult new knowing. It is the mystery factory that, like, I see the mystery of the thing, and its delight is in the capacity to then basically empower someone else with what they just rationalized. 24 catches it, and 24 makes it's like the sweeper, at a busy game. It never stops. That sweeper never stops at a
Yeah.
busy game, and it's never stops. It's sweeping through the act of return. It's constantly returning to sweep up the little nuggets that the pressure of 61, which says, I am the pressure of essentially the pineal gland receptor into the universe, and I am the pressure to translate existence.
Mm.
I am the pressure inside the human chemistry to translate existence. Everyone's got it. We're all sharing in that process. Gee, isn't it fun? Don't expect answers right away. Right? Because it's trying to translate existence, and
Mm-hmm.
61's mystery has a sadness that the melancholy is. There's the mystery. I can't get to the mystery. I can't figure out what mystery is right for me. It's just, it's not right. It's disempowering. And 24's melancholy is, why do I keep coming back here? Why is there so much sound bothering me? This whole channel is very sensitive to sound. And because the sound makes them return, and that's the name of the gate. And in that return, they're trying to rationalize, what was that thing? That thing was that. Was that with this? No, never mind. Scratch that. Do it again. Return. Do it again. Return. And it's always about something right now, something that kept being pressured in the now, about a mutative pulse that's right now. What makes it so interesting is, because this is an awareness center pouring into, unlike the root center down below pouring into the sacral, people are aware that this pressure is pouring in and that the conceptualization might be empowering. Down below, it's just chaos and sacral energy. When will it, when will it finally materialize something? And 60 is like, well, when will I finally transcend this limitation? When will I feel less stuck? When will I feel more organized? When will I feel like doing something? That's all 63 stuff. But up here, it's, oh my God, I see this. It might be, and it wants to empower. And it gets terribly sad when it cannot literally let the mystery factory run through into the rationalization factory that says, I've got a concept for this. Bam. All the mental gates have this form of bingo or eureka. I found it. They all have a version of that. And this one's version of that is I'd solved the mystery. And because it was a mystery at first, it wasn't something collective known and sort of going over. It was mystery. It's like there's nothing, and now it's something. That's the unique pulse. One important thing about 61 is that there's this whole channel. Actually, you can take a philosophy into your life if you have either gate 61 or the whole channel, or even 24 for that matter. Is there's things you can know. I mean, this is literally just practical things you can know, things that you absolutely do know, and there's things that you cannot know. And it's the surrender that says the things I cannot know, what to do. And it leaves, well, because it leaves you with just the things you definitely know, right? Even if you're wrong, doesn't matter, right? It's just the things you yourself inside have a knowing of. And then there's the things you can know because you at least are aware. You can go look it up online. If you want to dive in, you can come to know whatever the thing is. Those things aren't so much mystery. So it's about teasing out that thing that's mystery and saying, oh my God, I get to let this go. I'm driving myself crazy, returning like a Chinese water torture drip. Is what 24 does, or not all the time, but enough to where anyone with it knows what I'm talking about.
I do.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have the 24. I don't have the 61, but I have that 24 that's always going over something and over something and over something and over something where I'm just like, I want to get to the end of it. I want to come to the conclusion and understand something. And it's maddening when I cannot get to the end of it. And it'll just keep going in my brain. And I find I really love when the 61 is lit up in the transits, because I'll just get this like inspirational knowing. I'll just have something come down and it'll like meet with that 24. And it's like, oh, cool. And now I can process it. Whereas before, or otherwise, when the 61 is not lit up in the transits and my 24 is just going over it and over it and over again, it can get very maddening.
Absolutely. Now it's doing important work when this being is themselves, right? And they're like, this is great, and the direction feels good. They can wait. This is like for all of the pressure centers, for all of the gates, for all of design, learn to wait. Some things are instant, most aren't, or many aren't, however you want to look at that. And so you end up waiting, and then this one here then goes into this concept factory. And I guess I don't know what else I want to really say about this other the fear. 24's fear. So you will know this fear too, Moni. It's the fear of ignorance.
That makes sense.
I'm struck dumb with the not knowing, and it equates into a type of ignorance. And suddenly, I mean, in the moment of a fear, it can almost feel like life and death, even if it's just in the middle of a conversation. The fear of ignorance. So it's not it's your fear, but it's not a legitimate fear, other than an awareness fear. It's not a fear for you to like live your life by.
We have the 4323, which is the channel of structuring or design of individuality. So gate 43 is breakthrough. It's the gate of insight, and it is an ajna gate, which is that downward facing green triangle. And then gate 23 is splitting apart, or the gate of assimilation, and it's a throat gate, which is the brown square. And so 4323 is inspired knowing and rationalization that's received by the 43, right? So that's talking about the 6124, so the inspired knowing of the 61, the rationalization of 24 is then received by gate 43, and then a spontaneous breakthrough of gate 23 shares the insight. And so 4323 is empowerment and evolutionary change that's possible when new perspectives and innovative thinking are clearly explained and accepted.
That evolutionary movement is both standard evolutionary, right? We stepped up out of the water and came onto land, that type of evolution, but it's also behavioral, articulating, consciousness evolution, awareness evolution, efficiency evolution, industry building evolution, all of it. It's human evolution as well as everything else. Anyway, so the channel of structuring is from genius to freak or freak to genius. That is just one way to understand this. That's the keynote in the book, and it fits because it's so unique, right? Remember, it comes in a pulse. It is unique. No one else has it. And the pulse, by definition, means essentially that's the first time the known universe has seen it as well. Think about that, right? So in that quite unique way, even though they may have totally seen it before, because it's, rehashed stuff, I get it, but it's still unique enough. And how can anyone know what that is? So suddenly this person can't explain what their unique insight is. They seem like a freak because it's too new. It's too potentially mutative. It might change too many things. And then when gate 23 comes involved, it has a voice. It says, I explain or not. It's called assimilation. It's assimilating the noise coming down from 61 all the way to 43. And it has nothing to do with the noise except to split it apart and pull it back together in a form just like the radio receiver does what it does to a radio wave and jumbles it back and forth and now spits out the music you were listening to. Same thing. So when you have this whole channel, you become the knower. Your voice is I know. And the explaining, by the way, isn't just explaining how something might work. It's explaining the energy called I know. This voice of 23, instead of I explain or not, is really more appropriately put I know or not, or just as appropriately. And it's, if you have this channel, you're always at the verge of like, I know, yeah, I know, I know. If you have one of these gates, if you have 23, you want to know. If you have 43, you're like, I know, but I lost it. Oh,
Guilty as charged.
It's at the tip of my tongue, or I know, but I can't spit it out.
You're like, oh my God, I got this brilliant knowing that just came through, and you think you can just say it, and then it just which is interesting. Oh God.
Well, it gets sad when it can't do these things, or when it can't empower the other with its new knowing. So think of all the ways we've used empowerment now. Let's empower you to just get it all in order and 1, 2, 3, start the thing. Let's empower this direction. Let's empower some work. Let's empower your creative work. Let's empower your creative way in a direction. Let's empower your creativity so much that it contributes stuff. Let's empower that mystery you just went through and now can explain it, because that's a lot of work, mentally speaking, even if it happened in a moment. That's a lot of stuff. Let's empower these things. Let's empower the explaining of I know so that it impacts the other and empowers them. So empowerment starts to take on a lot of different keynotes and a lot of importance, why the keynote is so important for the circuitry. And the other stuff about this channel, I mean, it is a genius. It's got so much noise rattling around up in there that it's liable to raise its hand over and over and over again. Oh, I know, oh, I know. Right? That type of thing. And it's steadfast. It's almost like a fixedness. To try and explain to the knower differently is going to fall on deaf ears. You got to get used to that. If you have this channel, you're not hearing necessarily, the same, because you've heard it your own way. And it mandates and it makes for sure that a certain amount of uniqueness will be preserved by that individual. And when they're preserving their uniqueness, people think they're a little bit of a freak. When they're contributing their uniqueness, people think they're a genius. And then the rest of the time, they try and float in between, all nervous that they don't want to get labeled one and hoping they get the other. Yeah. And then the fear of 43. It's got a bona fide fear, and it's just straight up a fear of rejection. It's got a sudden hit over and over where rejection, because of your uniqueness, because the thing you're about to say is too much. Because it sounded good in your head, and as the words come out, the impact doesn't feel right. But it's still a manifestation at some point in time that it wants to come out the throat and be made into the world. So it's like a spell. We spell it or we say it, and that becomes what they used to call abracadabra. I mean, we spell and say things into existence. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole concept of like, blessing somebody compared to cursing. You know,
Right.
my curse word is a curse word, quote, quote, because you're cursing the space, you're cursing the energy and whatnot. Yeah, I had a couple things
Right.
too. So what's interesting is like the 4323, it is a projected channel on its own. If somebody just had this, then they'd be a projector. And so it's the importance of waiting to be recognized and invited to share that individual, unique, freaky genius knowing. And the other thing that's really interesting, because 43 is the breakthrough, right? It's like, oh my God, it's that like, aha, something came through and like you understand some new crazy thing. And the 23 is the splitting apart. It's how do you split that knowing into words, into something? So an interesting thing is people who have the 4323.
It's a big metamorphosis, right? It's a huge metamorphosis.
Yes, but specifically what I wanted to say though is that metamorphosis, sometimes people with the 4323, they will mispronounce words. And it's because it's literally, they're splitting it apart. And how does this word, how did this knowing get split into something specific? So maybe if you notice that about yourself, give yourself a break, because it's actually part of it, because that 23 is literally splitting up that mutative individual knowing into words. So sometimes things can come out funny.
And recognize for the internal harmony of your own self being perfect, because y'all are perfect. Just remember that. The internal harmony part says this must wait for recognition. All projected channels, no matter what they are, must have their own version of waiting for recognition, right? I mean, that's just a fact. So it's just so freaky at times that if you already know it might not totally fit in, you'll recognize it's not being recognized a lot. So internally speaking, that's not their fault, and that's not your fault. And it should help give you a little bit of peace of recognizing you might not be able to mutate or empower these with a sudden knowing. I mean, this channel, by the way, is in opposition, so there's always going to be a little more of it, right, than the other channels. It's across the wheel from each other. It makes a definition, and and it's a guaranteed need, and it's there to actually help bring structure to the 3420 more than anything. And second most, just as important, is to do a ton of explaining right as we're going into the whole crossover planning, because this shows up, along that trajectory around the wheel, and it leads to industry. So it's got to be on, and it's got to be new, and it's got to be mutative. It's got to empower the other. It's got to be shared in a sense that the other's got to invite it. I mean, it's got to be welcome is what I meant. And that's a big checklist. I want my boyfriend or girlfriend to have X, right? It's a big checklist.
Yeah.
Did you get all the points checked on your checklist? It's like, yeah, and now I'm a genius, or no, and now I can't spit it out. Just let it go. It wasn't for them at that time. It'll help you find those whom it is for. It's really what happened.
Here we have the channel 3828. It is the channel of struggle, or the design of stubbornness. And so gate 38 is opposition, or the gate of the fighter, and it's a root gate. And then gate 28 is preponderance of the great, or the gate of the great game player, and it's a splenic gate. So the root is the brown square at the bottom, and then the spleen is that brown triangle off to the side. And 3828 is about the struggle to find meaning and purpose for living. And it's the capacity to find meaning and purpose within life struggles. So gate 28 brings the awareness of the struggle's appropriateness and discerning what has value, what actually is worth fighting for. And then gate 38 is the pressure to preserve individual integrity, and it's fighting against, opposed to outside forces that are distracting from the true self.
As with all individual definition, this channel is much more than any of them, with maybe one or two exceptions, says, don't try to influence me. I'm struggling for a purpose. And that in that opposition is to outside forces. It's not just to what's, stupid. It's opposition to stupidity too, for itself. It's like, that's no good for me. It will oppose. But it's opposition to just influence in general, to keep itself pure, so that if the struggle in this unique individual way gets polluted with other people's stuff, you know how that goes. Took on too many opinions of someone else. Next thing you know, you didn't follow your own self. It's designed to follow one's own self very much so. 28 says, not only do I fight for a purpose, but I'm willing to take risk. The more I've come to some kind of awareness that maybe life isn't fulfilling my purpose. So a lot will come out of this. And then a lot of mundane stuff will come out of this. That fighter is just so busy trying to get the one thing that will give it some kind of meaning making that they forget everything. Everything's a struggle to them. You know, what do you want to eat? Struggle. What do you think? Struggle for just to give your own opinion sometimes. And so it's a very particular way that these people will be, and we need it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like 28 in the gate of struggle, it can sound really like womp womp, like it can sound really heavy if you have that. But yeah, it's not. I really like the line of like the gate of the great game player. Life is a game and you got to have something worth fighting for. You get so bored so easily if a game is too simple and you just beating it right away. You're like, I don't even want to play this because it's not challenging. You know, like if you're an athlete and you're like, an NBA or an NFL pro, you don't really want to play against the junior high varsity game. It's not challenging. It needs to have that bit of a oomph and something that you do have a dream and a dream worth fighting for. So it's really an interesting way to reframe it because I know it can, you know, some of the human design gates have some pretty intense names that can be a little off-putting. But if you dig a little deeper, you know, like humans are built to challenge and struggle. Like we're literally wired for it. And if we don't have something to challenge and struggle and push against, we'll create it. Like we'll create crazy stuff to fight against that doesn't even matter if our lives are too easy.
Totally. And this challenging of 38 is, I guess it's similar to all the three gates on this side of the root center, the 54, 58, and this 38. They make some kind of a challenge. You know, just like on the other side, it does some kind of a provocation. And, you know, the challenge of 58 isn't even necessarily challenging, although it becomes an energy to challenge in gate 18. But 38 is to challenge this own internal thing. I mean, look where it goes. It ends up leading into so many different definitions, right? Because 57 breaks out into 3 different channels. So one of those things it breaks into is centering. This is a self-centered way to follow your own meaning making and help get you to your own convictions. And it can be deaf if you've got a partner with this. They're very often they just not quite hearing the thing you're saying, and that means you got to wait a little bit. If these people try and cross the street and you know something's coming, you know, pull them back. But the thing is, they might be really annoyed at you for interfering with their particular struggle, you know. So just understand the struggle is the fight for the purpose that is very happy to be creative, mutative, outside of its melancholy, and not have to fight nearly as hard. That's really what it teaches us. We ultimately find, oh, we don't have to fight so hard anymore. The purpose is there. And so this is a great movement for humanity's consciousness.
Oh, lovely. That really ties it together nicely. Continuing on to the 5720, and this is the channel of the brainwave, and it's a design of penetrating awareness. And so gate 57 is the gentle or the gate of intuitive clarity, and it's a spleen. So that's that brown triangle again on the side. And then gate 20 is the gate of contemplation, which is the gate of now. And it's a throat gate, which is the brown square up top by where you'd imagine the throat would be. And so the channel 5720 is where intuitive insight is given its clearest voice in the now moment. And it's penetrating self-recognition of the truth of our existence. And the voice of the 5720 is the I know I am alive now.
I am alive. I know I'm alive right now. Absolutely. So this gate of the gentle, it is heavily influenced by the 28 below it. The 28 below it will cause this gate, which is primarily concerned with integration and centering, in the individual circuitry. It will take that and say, you can't quite be so integrative. You have to share what you know. This is a deep gate of knowing. It was our first real sturdy awareness in humanity, was this intuitive clarity in the now that helps us survive right now. Everything is right now. And it hears with such specificity. It's the gate of the right ear. And it gets up to 20, and what it hears now is either it's psyched about it and it's out doing stuff, or it's not. The sadness and the melancholy of this thing is the thing that helps boost or slow down the manifestation. Unbridled, no melancholy, this thing would literally try to manifest its way into unaware things accidentally. If there's no gate 28 to help correct it, it might do the same thing. And so this penetrating awareness, this brain wave, and I've often worked at what is this brain wave. It's this direct connection of brain to mouth in a way, except this brain is our intuitive brain, the thing that happens so fast we can't find an answer for it. And this thing cuts through the air so fast, the owner of this gate, this channel who has it, doesn't know. It can feel a little like a cat on a hot tin roof. It's like, I know this, I know that. I am now, I am now, I am now, I am now. And in a sense that you have to manifest, yet it's a projected channel. And it certainly doesn't look like one, but it is. And so this penetrating awareness is meant to keep us alive in the now. It's also meant to basically empower everyone around it. This is now what I know. This is the thing that I had a little fear on, and it became clear in a nanosecond. This is a channel that either talks a lot or not at all, depending on literally the vibration and the safety inside that room. We need this channel. It helps make integration a little bit softer because this channel is here.
That's
And
really
because
cool.
because of gate 28 as well.
That's neat.
Yeah.
It's neat too, because it's a so right now in the moment, both with the spleen, because the spleen is just an existential in the moment, in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. And then gate 20 is the now. So it's like the now.
Right. The only now, the first now. Right. Gate 20's voice says, I am now. It might even be shortened to just I now. Because to say I am is even an awareness. 57 is the awareness that I am. And 20 just says I am now, or it would just say I now.
I know. Yeah.
I now.
Because the am would be the splenic, and just the I now
sorta, yeah,
would be
you
the
could
throat. If you really want to
absolutely.
like piece it out.
Yeah, because I now has got no awareness. It's just literally, it's existential. And 57 has awareness beyond the existential, yet it's incredibly existential. If you've got this channel, you're always biting through into the moment with something that is absolutely right now. And it might be off-putting to others. Or it might be something you think you have to, quote, work on. You know what I mean? You don't. You need to know it. But it's part of you. This is quick. This channel's lightning fast. And that's all it is. In fact, it's nothing else but lightning fast. Think about it. If the second it's not lightning fast, it's sort of not, because the spleen determines in
So
the
it's either
moment.
lightning fast or it's nothing.
Or it's sort of not. It's sitting there waiting to be lightning fast
lightning
the
fast.
second again. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
The 3955 is the channel of emoting, and it's the design of moodiness. And so gate 39 is obstruction, or the gate of provocation. And that's that root center gate, that brown square at the bottom. And then gate 55 is abundance, or the gate of spirit. And it's a solar plexus gate, which is the brown triangle on the flip side of the chart. And so the 3955 is prone to melancholy and uncertainty. It's provocative and emotional, and it has that pulsing on-off wave of moods that are set into motion here. And the emotional wave underlying the passion and melancholy of individualism is mechanic, and it's an endless continuum between happiness and sadness, happiness and sadness.
It's just so important to recognize that this channel guarantees that the person that wakes up in the morning looks at the glass and the answer is it is either half full or half empty, in some slight minor kind of way, one way or another. And take that example and really mushroom it out into something bigger for your life if you have this channel in your body graph, because it guarantees an emotional wave that feels relatively steady, except to the owner of the gate, the wearer. You're wearing this gate because you got it in your chart, right? There's a steady uneasiness that comes emotionally with this, because you always know you could fall down, all the way down, and then suddenly your cup doesn't runneth over. And then 39, the provocateur, it is provoking. It's provoking sometimes by doing nothing. It's provoking by picking at and needling. And it's just trying to find the spirit of 55. And this spirit of 55 is the gate that's waking up as part of the Phoenix. And it's an emotional, deep emotional awareness. And it'll be one of our most profound emotional awarenesses the more we get a handle on it. And to get a handle on this whole channel is to realize you're fickle. You don't know. You have no idea, and it might take a long time before you actually know. It's wicked concerned with passion and romance and that individualness that then gets up to gate 22 and 12 when we get to it. And it's got this, it doesn't have an access to the throat yet, but if it did, it would articulate caution like gate 12 does. It's its own form of the fickleness is to keep it somewhat cautious so that it doesn't go too quickly. That's why it's so important this whole stream wake up, because out of all the gates, it knows it's not supposed to move too quickly. I can't wait till everyone figures that out. Oh, let's slow down, you know,
What a
or
thought.
else they go up and down on that wave. And the thing is, it's not a roller coaster like the crash wave, and it doesn't step lively like the tribal wave, you know, ratcheting forward and backward. It spikes for no particular reason at all. They all move for no particular reason at all. Technically, they're chemistry. You know, women get this. Women menstruate. They're used to that chemistry. Yet they'll go ahead and say they'll make no big deal out of that chemistry. You never hear a woman saying, "Oh, I'm menstruating at this point. I quit my job and it's time to move to a new town." It's not. You don't say that. No
No,
woman
you
will say
just you
that.
deal with it and you wait
They're
it
like,
out,
because
and
they're
it'll
so
get better in
aware.
a few days.
It's very intelligent of them. It's emotionally intelligent of them to recognize this is a chemistry. Oh yeah, no, this doesn't matter. It's just it's on the move.
Hmm.
Um, give them a touch of melancholy, like I said on the other side, and it's the end of the world. It's the same, not necessarily, but I'm just saying it's the same exact thing. And the thing with it is to watch that when it spikes all the way down. Do not run to the medicine chest. It's not something you're supposed to be medicated for or that you have an eating disorder around. Don't worry about all of this stuff. Eating disorders come out of this channel, by the way. We need to talk about that at some point when we can go in more depth. But
Sure. There's the
don't,
correlation. Like,
there's a
just
huge,
disclaimer, we're not giving any kind of medical advice here. It's just there's a correlation with these type of issues that arise that you can see in your chart. Talk to your doctor before you change anything. Disclaimer.
it's an incredible correlation. Talk to your doctor, of course, if you have one.
Yeah.
And so if you take that sudden down of this, it's fast. I sunk. And
Hmm.
if you take the sudden up of it, because it spikes, it doesn't move slowly, it sort of moves quickly. And that's these people know that, so no wonder it feels off-putting. Suddenly you're sliding, you know, and suddenly you're going up and things are really good. And the thing is, when will it stop? And suddenly you go down and you're like, when will it end? You
Hmm.
know, when will the going down end? And none of that is what you're supposed to be thinking with this channel. You recognize the fickleness, and it guarantees to ward off anyone who's not right for you. So look at it that way. This channel will it not, Moni? What do you think about that statement?
Oh no,
I
I
think
mean
it
it
will.
definitely does. Yeah, I have gate 55 without gate 39. So I could definitely tell when there's like a gate 39 around that I don't vibe with, because it just pokes. It's just
Hmm.
poking at you and poking at you. And it's like, oh, I don't stop it. Stop it. Because that gate 39 is not the provocation that's correct for me. But I've been around other gate 39s that can have that like pokey provocation, but it can actually connect with my 55 in a way and provoke me into a greater spirit and realizing that abundance, it's about realizing it and recognizing it. And it is like a state of mind in a lot of ways. So it is very interesting how that 39 can be a bit pokey, and then that 55 is either like, I'm not into you and like go away, or it's like, okay, you're poking at me, but you're getting me to develop or to evolve in some way or to grow. So that's
Right.
very interesting.
Then that's what it's there to do. And it's such a unique individual process. It wants to mutate the other. It is trapped in itself because it is unique and individual. So to poke at it and finally get something out of it meant you had the right key for that lock,
Hmm.
which is a very particular thing, right? So
Hmm.
me
Yeah.
likey.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I was just going to kind of reiterate everything, all these gates that we're looking at that are going to be hitting the solar plexus side, whether we're doing in our circuitry or in future episode, it's recognizing that up and the down. So like Danny was saying, it's like you can be in this low place and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be so low forever. And when will I
When
ever
will
be
it
happy
end?
again? And then on the
Right,
flip side, you're like, oh my God, I'm finally happy and it's so great. But oh no, what if I get sad again? And there
right.
can be this like nervousness, this anxiousness, this kind of fear of it. But as with any gates on the solar plexus, some more than others, but with all of them, it's like you're on a boat. There's going to be the ups, there's going to be the downs. If you're on a boat and it goes low, are you freaking out that it'll never go up again? You're like, no, you're on water. It's going to move. It's going to move up and down. So that's what Danny was like trying to get at, of like,
Yeah.
the sky isn't falling, Chicken Little. It'll be okay. You will be happy again. Like, you will feel that lightness again. Even if in that moment it can feel like you're so low and you're drowning, just trust like the wave will go up again. And when it's up, enjoy it. And yeah, eventually like the wave's going to dip again.
Settle out. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, if you can surf with it, you'll have a lot more freedom. Because I've definitely seen this with some of my emotional friends, is like, they'll get really caught up and they'll feel so low. And then by freaking out about it and getting so deep into it and so in their head and the sky is falling, it's like they make it worse for themselves. And that low will be more uncomfortable and it'll last longer because they're so tensing
And
against
yield
it.
less.
Yeah.
Very
And
often it will end up yielding more confusion that lingers into the next cycle that didn't need
yeah.
to, because this is
Yeah.
meant to clear it out.
Oh, that's
This is meant to
interesting.
clear it out. Emotional clarity comes out of this gate, out of all the solar plex gates.
Yeah. And it reminds me also, it's like, if you ever have like a cramp of any kind, whether it's like an abdominal cramp or a leg cramp or something like that,
Yeah.
the automatic reaction is so often to like tense up with it and like, oh no, I don't want to feel this. And you tense with it and you're like trying to fight it. But the body needs to contract. Like, the body works by contracting and releasing, contracting and releasing. And if you fight the contraction, you actually end up making it worse. So I've actually done that, where I've really practiced when I'm having some kind of cramp or pain or some uncomfortableness, where I really try to like consciously let go and just let it contract and do its thing. And instead of fighting it, and by fighting it, I'd make it twice as bad. Whereas if I can be like, cool, this is just passing through, this wave is just coming by, this is just coming through, and then it'll be lighter and easier and it passes more smoothly. So I invite, all my emotional beings, is like, I hear you. I'm sorry you're in a rough spot. And like, my heart goes out to you. And also, it's not going to last forever. And the more that you can like surf with it, the smoother it's going to go.
Take the childlike version that stays true no matter what. It's sadness and the emotional wave make you smarter. You get more intelligent and you get more capable and 10 times more resilient the more you just allow the process to happen. Because as you come out the other side, you have something called emotional clarity. And that we could do a whole episode on what is emotional clarity and have people on to talk about it, like a profile party, but just for the emotions type thing or whatever, right? And wouldn't they, if we had a round table of emotional people, would they not give us what, emotional clarity would be like? Those two words was worth, an hour worth of conversation, right? Easily. That emotional clarity becomes a resilience that the glass is the glass and it isn't half full or half empty. It's just your view of it. And when it's half empty, you're about to get smarter because it fills up, more resilient, more conscious, 10 times more aware. You're about to be a lot more attractive to yourself on the other side, never mind to others. And then on the other side, the glass does feel half full. Let it, it feels like it's running over. My cup runneth over. 55 gives us my cup runneth over. And I think that's pretty cool. So I feel good about this.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's like, instead of worrying about the glass being half empty or half full, just be happy that you have a glass.
Yeah, the glass. It's just a glass, and
just a glass.
Right.
Watch it rise and fall.
And by the way, you got a water jug. You can fill it up at any time. That's the point.
2212, which is the channel of openness and the design of a social being. And so gate 22 is grace and the gate of openness, and it's a solar plexus gate. So that's that brown triangle on the side of the chart. And then gate 12 is standstill, or the gate of caution, and it's a throat gate, which is the brown square up top. And the 2212 states that openness is dependent on the ebb and the flow of the emotional wave or the mood. And it creatively voices and acts out moodiness, melancholy, passion, romance, and drama of the individual wave. And the quality of restraint of the 12 governs the openness of the 22. And it's limiting it to social interactions with people with mutative potential.
And people that are worth listening to, and people that the articulation feels like, I feel like doing it, and that speaks to gate 12's voice, which says, I know I can try if I'm in the mood. And it's a manifesting channel. There's only 3 manifesting channels. This is one of them, that are just the channel itself is a manifesting channel. So It says the manifestation of what is it we're going to end up talking about, and the manifestation of romance and this personal relationship, aspect to this is meant to be manifested through the act of living out incredible uniqueness and going through a fickle process. Don't just come strolling in. It's not, you stroll in all you want, but it's not going to work until a long, drawn out, fickle process takes place. And 12 says caution, right? Gate 12 is just straight up caution, and it's cautious about all the action that's below it. That's a lot going on down there. I see you're listening to me, you little temptress, but if I let you listen for too long, I might have to love you back. You know what I mean? I might have to do some of this stuff. And then the emotional chemistry comes in, and the emotional solar plex is the source of all this incredible clarity over bonding and pleasure and food and all kinds of stuff that's pleasurable to us. And gate 12 wants that as soon as it's being offered right. It can't withstand 22 after a little while. It can try and say, I'm not in the mood all at once, but it won't stay there. So that caution is incredibly important. And the whole channel itself, look at on either side of this stream of awareness, this individual stream of awareness, this whole stream itself, the gates on either end, 12 says caution and 38 says provocation. So one's trying to get it going, and the other one's like, whoa, hold on a minute. And in the center is the emotional wave saying, hey, we got some juice to go here. Don't hold us back too far. And 12 ultimately will open up, just like gate 6 will open up to intimacy and say, yes, I can. That's the power of its voice. Gate 12 can articulate, yes, I can. I'm totally in the mood, and I know I can. Because everything on the individual circuitry is I know or not. I know I provoke you. I know I'm here. I know I'm listening. And 12 is I know I can if I feel like it, period. I know I can have the passion to fall in love with what is it I'm hearing from you, given that we're not fickle at each other enough to push each other away. And the rest is a tease and a ton of fun. That's what the stream says when it's working right in the people who would wear this in their costume. Yep.
That's neat. And it's neat to consider it and just kind of remember of like, okay, this is the 1222 is an individual expression of the emotional experience.
Yeah.
And that makes sense that like the 22 is going on that wave, that up and that down and that up and that down. And then the 12, like you said, is like, hey, let's wait. Let's not just shoot something out of this individual wave because it might not be appropriate because you might be in a weird place in your mood. So it makes sense that 12 is that caution that's like, hang on, maybe let's temper not speaking because we might be in a weird place. And if I'm in a weird place and I just say some stuff, ooh, that might get me in trouble. I might regret that later. So it makes sense that the 12 has that caution, standstill, that like pause button.
And its concern isn't for will it look silly in the whole group. Its concern is will I look silly to the people I'm intimate with, especially the one I came with. You know what I mean? Because the design of a social being, it already knows it can be social in a group. That's easy. Nothing personal about that in a way, right? You don't have to take it too serious. Its real socialness is in the socialness with one, with the other, or with a couple other small settings, and especially settings of two, one, a partnership of some sort. That's where it's really, this grace is something powerful. I love how this is 22 is part of rulership. So the whole emotional process is meant to manifest a type of new, awake, nine-centered, graceful rulership that does get fickle a little bit, but is willing to provoke the next wave of what we think might be new. And please let me mutate you and bring it new. It's new. It's coming. 1, 2, 3, go. So that's this whole stream, and that's this final channel of openness, this design of a social being, or not. There's always or not. Design of social being or not. Antisocial, totally. This channel will be like, I'm not social right now. I'm the opposite. Well, that would be true in that moment.